Hi everyone. Today we are going to be covering lesson 312. Lesson 312 is about equations and circles. Because of writing SOLs this week, we will not be having an attendance quiz for 312 or the 310-11 lessons, but there is still a lesson check, so don't forget to do those. Now in Algebra 1, maybe even before, you should have learned what makes a function a function. And just a little review of that, because it's not super important, but it is a little bit, at least for this. So a function is something that you can graph. And when you take a vertical line, you should be able to draw a vertical line through that function at anywhere, and it only intersect that function one time. If you graph something and you can, let's say I graph this, and you draw a vertical line and it intersects it more than once, that is not a function. Okay. And the reason that's important is because you can only graph functions on your graphing calculator. Okay, so a circle is not a function. A circle fails that vertical line test. Okay, if I graph a circle, I'll pretend it's a circle, you draw a vertical line through it, it crosses twice. So a circle is not a function. So I'll never be able to really write it as like a y equals and graph a whole circle. But we can still write an equation for it. And the equation for our circle in standard form, I'll explain what these letters mean in a second, is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. HK is a point, and that's the center of the circle. R, you've probably already figured it out, is the radius. You do not need to memorize this equation. It is on your formula sheet. So if you want to find that on your formula sheet, it is posted to OMHS. It's on the back. Here it is. There's your circle. Here's the formula for a circle. And if you don't remember what H and K and R stand for, they are labeled in the picture there for you. They are not in the symbols, but they're at least labeled in the circle there for you. Now this formula might actually look super familiar to you, and I'll explain why it does in just a moment. Okay. So yeah, I'll explain that now. What formula does the equation of a circle remind you of? Okay. What if I took the square root of both sides? Well, I know a square root and a square cancel. Does this remind you of anything? Remember that H and K are a point. Remember, a point is always in the form xy. So what if I called this x2, y2? That's a coordinate. Well, the radius of a circle is the distance between the center and a point on the circle. So what if instead of called it a radius, I called it a distance instead? Oh my gosh, that's the distance formula. If you haven't memorized the distance formula yet and you're using the formula sheet, you have the distance formula on your formula sheet. It's just kind of hidden. I didn't show it to you when we did the distance formula because it wouldn't have made sense at the time. But now, if you can understand how I rewrote the equation of a circle and got the distance formula, you have it right there for you. The radius is the distance between the center and a point on the circle. And here's your equation of a circle, just modified a little bit. I didn't do anything to change it. All I did was a little bit of algebra, canceled out a square, replace the h and k with an x and a y, and boom, you have your distance formula. So let's use that equation of a circle to write some equations of a circle. And if it helps to write that equation at the top of your paper somewhere, be my guest. What you're going to do is you're going to look at your center and you're going to label that HK. The radius you'll label R. Now in our equation, it's R squared. So I like to just calculate, well, what is R squared? R is 2. 2 squared is 4. So R squared is 4. So when I write the equation, this will be X minus, okay, H is 5 squared plus Y minus K is 3 squared equals R squared. Some of the biggest mistakes the students make, these are silly mistakes, but they're enough of a mistake to be marked wrong. Many students forget to put the squared part, so don't be that person. Many students mix up their signs inside. This is minus inside, and we'll see what happens when we have a negative in just a moment. And many students also put R here instead of R squared. Okay, all of them are very minor and silly mistakes, but it's enough to be marked wrong. So just be very careful. Don't forget your square, double check your signs in your parentheses, and make sure this is R squared out here. So let's do the next one. HK is my center. R is 14. So R squared will be 14 squared. 14 squared is 196. So when I write my equation, I'm going to do X minus -1. You don't want to leave it minus a negative. Minus a negative is the same as plus. So I'm going to write plus 1 plus Y minus, it's just a 7, so this is 7 squared equals R squared. Okay. I would like you to try number 3. Try number 3 now. Do that one. Okay, so you should have X plus 2 squared plus Y plus 11 squared equals 324. Double check the details. Do you have a plus 2 and a plus 11? Did you remember to square both of your parentheses? Did you put 324 here and not 18? Okay, if you did all of those things and you have it written just like I do, you got it 100% correct and you did a great job. Now let's look at the next one. The center is at 0, 9. Okay. Before you start writing, just let me write this out and you'll see why I don't want you to write it just yet. Okay. We would write X minus 0 squared, and we would have Y minus 9 squared equals, let's see, 32 squared is 1024. You are not going to see an answer written this way. And the reason why I say that is because we have this minus 0. Anything minus 0 is itself. So instead of you seeing it written as X minus 0, you're just going to see it as X because X minus 0 is X. So anytime you have an H or a K that's 0, you know you're going to have X minus 0, which is just X. So this becomes X squared. So now you can write this one down. So instead of writing X minus 0, just write X. Okay, because X minus 0 is X. Now the next one, we have a 0 as our K, so we have HK. And our radius is the square root of 47. All right, well, if the radius is the square root of 47, what is R squared? So we're going to square both sides. Remember, a square root and a square cancel. So R squared is just 47. This one sometimes throws students for a loop. If your radius is the square root of 47, and I square both sides, the square and the square root cancel, leaving me with R squared equals 47. So for my equation, I'm going to write X minus -4, which is really X plus 4, squared, plus Y minus 0. Well, Y minus 0 is just Y. This is Y squared. And R squared is 47. I'd like you to try number 6. Try number 6. All right, so you should have x minus 15 squared plus y plus 6 squared equals 58. Double check your small details. Do you have a minus 15 here? Do you have a plus 6? Did you remember to square both sets of parentheses? Do you have a 158? All right. So now we're going to use that equation and just given different pieces of information. So in this problem, we are given a graph. So in this graph, we can find the center and the radius. It's not given to us explicitly, but we can calculate that or count the blocks. So let's see. Here's the center of our circle. So the center is at 1, 2, 3, -2. Okay, so that's my h and my k. And then I can calculate my radius. So now I can calculate the radius. Okay, so the radius goes from the center to the edge of the circle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So my radius is 5. In my equation for a circle, I need radius squared. So if r is 5, r squared is 5 squared, which is 25. Now I have everything I need to write my equation. X minus 3 squared plus y plus 2 squared equals 25. And there it is. What if they give me the center of a circle and a point on the circle? So if they do that, they've given us a little extra work, but not a whole lot, just enough. They did not give us the radius. We need to know the radius, because once we know the radius, then we'll know the radius squared. So to find the radius, we're going to use the distance formula, which is the equation of a circle, to calculate the radius. Because the distance between the center and a point on the circle is the radius. So you can call it d for distance if you want, or you can call it the radius, it's the same thing. Okay? It's the distance between the center and the point. So the distance formula says subtract your x values and square them, subtract your y values and square them, and then take the square root. Okay? So this is 9 minus 7 is 2. 2 squared is 4. 10 minus 4 is 6. 6 squared is 36. So my radius is the square root of 40. And yes, that can be simplified, but I'm not going to simplify it here because I want the radius squared. So all I'm going to do is square both of these. And the square root and the square cancel. So radius squared is 40. So now I have h and k, that's my center. I have my r squared. So we can say x minus 9 squared plus y minus 10 squared equals r squared. If I had simplified this, then I would have had to square it and it would have been a little bit more work that I don't really need to do. So here's my final answer. Okay, so I'm going to use the distance formula to calculate my radius, which will help me find my radius squared, which will help me plug everything I need into the equation of a circle. Try number 9. Try that one now. Calculate your radius and then use that to write the equation of your circle. So you should get x minus 1 squared plus y plus 5 squared equals 128. One of the biggest mistakes that I see students make on this one is they actually use the wrong point in the equation. Remember, in our equation, this is h and k, our center. So I use this point in my equation, not this one. The only thing that this point is good for is helping me find the length of the radius. Your radius, you should have gotten the square root of 128, which yes, that can be simplified, but I want to square it to find r squared. So I don't really need to simplify it because I just want to square it. And the square root of 128 squared is 128. Okay, what happens if they give me the circumference or the area of a circle? How can I find that? So if you look at your formula sheet, looking at a circle. The equation for circumference is 2 pi r. The equation for area is pi r squared. So looking at number 12, if they tell me that the circumference is 6 pi, well, I know that circumference is 2 pi r, and they just told me that was 6 pi. I can solve for radius. I'm going to divide both sides by 2 pi. So these 2 pi's cancel, giving me r. Pi divided by pi is 1. 6 divided by 2 is 3. So here they have very sneakily told me the radius. The radius is 3, which means that r squared is 9. Here's my h and my k. And now I can just easily write the equation of my circle. Okay. Go ahead and try number 13. It's a very similar process. Try number 13. So your equation for this circle should say x minus 9 squared plus y minus 12 squared equals 72.25. So how I got that 72.25? Remember, the circumference is 2 pi r. They told me the circumference was 17 pi. Divide both sides by 2 pi. So on this side, you'll get an r. 17 divided by 2 is 8.5. So the radius is 8.5. Square 8.5. Not super pretty, but it's all right. R squared is 72.25. H is 9. K is 12. R squared is 72.25. A very similar idea will happen for area. If they give us the area, the equation for area is just a little different. Area is pi r squared. So if they tell me that the area is 16 pi, I want to get r squared by itself. I can divide by pi. Cancel, 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 cancel. R squared equals 16. And because I just need r squared in my equation, I could stop right there. If I wanted to know the radius, I would take the square root of both sides, and the radius would be 4. But because the equation of a circle uses r squared, I have everything that I need. My h is negative 8, k is negative 11. So x plus 8 squared plus y plus 11 squared equals r squared. Boom, there it is. Okay, go ahead and try number 15. Try that one. So you should get x minus 2 squared plus y plus 2 squared equals 361. Because pi r squared equals 361 pi, just divide both sides by pi, you get r squared equals 361. There it is. H is a positive 2, k is a negative 2. And we could work backwards. What if they give us the equation and ask us for the center and the radius? Well, that's not hard. X minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. So here, because this is minus and this is minus, that means h is positive 5. Minus k minus 1, so k is 1. R squared, in this case, let's see what I'll do here, is 64. So how would I get the radius? Well, I want to undo a square. Square root. So the radius is 8. Now if the signs don't match, like I have x plus 7, okay, this was supposed to be x minus h. So what would the h have been to make this a plus? Well, it would have had to be negative. So the h is negative 7. These signs match. So k is 2. R squared is 324. So to find r, we'll have to take the square root of both sides. And the square root of 324 is 18. Oop. Okay, now we have to be tricky here. It almost got me. The radius is 18. This wants to know what's the diameter. Remember, the diameter is 2 radiuses. So this is 2 times 18. 2 times 18 is 36. So the diameter is 36. Be careful, it got tricky. Let's look at number 18. This just says x squared. Interesting. There was no minus or plus h. So what could h have been? And what can I add or subtract to x and not change its value at all? 0. So h is 0. K, this says y plus 10. I need it to be a y minus something. So the only way that a minus could have turned into a plus was if k was negative. So this is negative 10. Okay. In this case, our radius squared is 42.25. So to get rid of my square, I'm going to square root both sides. And so that gives me r is 6.5. It's asking me for the diameter. So I'm going to multiply that by 2 and get 13. Go ahead and try number 19. Try number 19, see what you get. All right, so your center, you should have 6, negative 11. And now r squared was 58. It's not a perfect square, so when you take the square root, you get a really ugly decimal. I just left it the square root of 58 to keep it nice and exact. If you rounded it and you put about 7.6, that wouldn't be wrong because it didn't say to keep it exact and didn't say to round. Either one would be okay with me. And now the last one. We're going to write an equation of a circle that has a diameter with these endpoints. So in this one, they did not give us the center and they did not give us the radius. Okay, so here's what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to find those things. The first thing I do is I find the center. Okay, so think of a circle. There it is. We'll pretend it's a circle. Here's your diameter. This center is the midpoint of your diameter because these two pieces have to be congruent. So not only is it the center of the circle, it's the midpoint of a diameter. So you're going to use your midpoint formula to calculate the center. So we're using the midpoint formula to calculate the center. Okay. After we use the midpoint formula to calculate the center, that will tell us HK. And now we need to find the radius. And we're going to find the radius kind of like how we did in the problem back here. Okay. We'll use a distance formula. You can use the distance formula one of two ways. Personally, I like to use the distance formula to calculate the radius. And you'll use one of these 2 points and the center. And it doesn't matter which one you pick for that. The other way you could do it is you could use the distance formula to calculate the length of the entire diameter using both of those points and then dividing it by 2 to find the radius. I like this way better. Okay, so let's practice doing that. Let's first find our center. So the center says use your midpoint formula. So the midpoint formula says you add your x values together, divide by 2 for the x coordinate, add your y values together, divide by 2 for your y coordinate. So negative 14 plus negative 10 is negative 24, divided by 2 is negative 12. 1 plus 9 is 10, divided by 2 is 5. So here's our center, HK. Now we have to find the radius. So pick one of the 2 endpoints. It doesn't matter which one. I'm going to pick the first one. I'm going to use that endpoint and the center to find the radius. So the distance will be, okay, again, I'm using negative 12.5 and negative 14.1. 1 point on the diameter and the center. The distance between the circle and the center is the radius. Negative 14 minus negative 12 squared plus 1 minus 5 squared. So this becomes negative 2. Negative 2 squared is 4. 1 minus 5 is negative 4. Negative 4 squared is 16. So the distance okay, because this d was for distance, is the square root of 20. Okay. So that's my radius. So now I can find radius squared, just square both sides. So r squared is 20. Now I have everything I need to write my equation. I have h, I have k, I have my r squared. Okay, so that was 3.12, writing equations of circles. There's no attendance quiz for today since this is the week of writing SOLs. If that changes, you'll be told about that. But as everything I know as of right now, while making this video, there won't be an attendance quiz. Hopefully you understand how to write the equations of circles, and please make sure you go through the content provided on OMHS. Have a great day, everyone.